Hello and welcome to this talk during LudoNarraCon. Thank you to the organisers of LudoNarraCon for inviting us all, for allowing us to talk in this panel. My name is Saoirse Dunbar and I am the host of the Adventure Games podcast. And I'm here with three fantastic game developers. And we are going to be talking about retro narrative games and how to make them appeal to a modern day audience. And look, now I am not a game developer, but luckily, as I said, there's three of them, and as it happened, the three of you guys have made a retro, old school, adventure narrative game, survival horror. But they're all, first of all, they're all fantastic, and they're all quite different as old school games as well. So before we talk about this topic and your games, we can introduce yourselves. So who wants to go first? Shall we go from left to right from what I could see? So Adam, would you like to introduce yourself and tell us the name of your game?
Sure. Hi, I'm Adam Vian. I have an indie games company with my brother Tom called SFB Games. And I'm creative director, game designer, artist, writer, whatever, a million different things, I guess. And we have a game called Crow Country, which is a survival horror type thing.
Yes, Crow Country, which I loved, and I think just about anybody who's played it has loved as well, including, I believe, a certain Tim Schafer posted online.
Tim Schafer's played multiple of my games through sheer coincidence, actually.
Oh, wow. Well, that's... yeah. That must be really good to hear. But I saw him
it's
post.
It's why I make the games. I make them for Tim to play.
Tim, yeah. So you
just whatever, yeah.
Don't know if you just DM him, hey Tim, if you could give.
yeah.
No, we'll be talking more about Crow Country and its inspirations and how you went about making it as well. But fantastic game. I'd encourage people to check that out. And we'll talk about more. But then Julia, would you like to introduce yourself and mention your game?
Sure. Hi, I'm Julia Minamata. I am an indie game dev. I'm based in Toronto, Canada, and I released The Crimson Diamond last August. And I did, like Adam, I did basically everything for the most part, but we can get into that later. Yeah, that's me.
Yeah, well, it's going to repeat myself, but also fantastic game. I have luckily enough played all of your games. And again, it was absolutely fantastic, and it's been very well reviewed. It was reviewed on Edge magazine. Can't get much better coverage than that, and a very positive, very high review as well. And it, caused a bit of a storm. Everyone is talking about it when it's released and afterwards as well. So we'll be talking more about that game. So thank you, Julia. And then Yann, how are you? Would you like to introduce yourself and tell us what game you'll be talking, or games you'll be talking about?
My name is Yann. I'm based in the south of France. And I made a game called Inspector Waffles Early Days. It was released 3 months ago. And it's a detective game. And I released it on PC and Game Boy. So we probably will talk about that today.
Yes, so speaking of old school, I mean, you've made a game actually available for the Game Boy. So it wasn't just inspired by a Game Boy game, but it's actually available. I mean, I wasn't even sure that Game Boy, I mean, it might say a lot about me, but I didn't even know that you could still buy games for Game Boy, but you can. And you just made your game Inspector Waffles Early Days for that and PC. Well, thank you for the introductions. We can talk a little bit about your games, and then we can talk about the inspirations behind it and that. So, Adam, tell us a little bit about Crow Country, then, that Tim Schafer and anyone else who's played it loved.
Sure. So, Crow Country is a classic style survival horror game set in an abandoned theme park called Crow Country, and it's primarily influenced by Resident Evil 1, 2, and 3, and Silent Hill 1, I guess, and it's it's a mixture of exploration, combat, story, puzzle solving. It's definitely more of a puzzle game than it is an action game. It's pretty puzzle heavy, I would say, and it's kind of a mixture of old school traditions with some quality of life stuff. So we sort of tried to make an approachable old school game, I guess. That was the idea.
Yeah, so it's again survival horror, but also, I think I might have been one of the few people who played it, but you have another option. You have it in exploration mode where you can remove the combat. I believe as well. Because I played with no combat because I am terrible at combat. I get stressed very easily, especially if there's shooting or if there's monsters coming at me. And it's a testament to the quality of the game that I still loved it.
Well, thank you.
That I still loved, everything else, the story, puzzles, exploration, the dialogue and the characters in that game as well. So even if obviously I'm sure, most people I know have played it with the combat. But if you like me, that you don't like combat, you can also play the game and get through it as well. So, fantastic. Inspired Resident Evil, Silent Hill. We'll talk more about that. And then Julia, the Crimson Diamond. What can you tell us about that game?
Yeah, I was very much inspired by old Sierra, specifically Sierra adventure games, although when I was growing up, I enjoyed most, LucasArts and Sierra adventure games. But the aesthetic style of Sierra, where it's kind of a bit more realistic and less cartoony, that's what I kind of gravitated toward. And I gravitated also toward this EGA 16-color palette. It was just so bright and vibrant that it just immediately appealed to me. When I thought about making my own game, I thought about recreating that effect and that look of it. As well, it's a text parser adventure game, which is something else that Sierra was more into than. I don't think LucasArts made any text parser games. I mean, seriously, maybe you can correct me, but I can't think off the top of my head if they made any.
I don't think so. I'm trying to think their early games with like Loom and they made Labyrinth.
I don't know.
But I haven't actually played those games. I think I've played every other LucasArts game, but I think you're correct. I think definitely Crimson Diamond and early Sierra games.
Yeah, very, very much that. And so, of course, one of my primary inspirations was The Colonel's Bequest, which was an EGA palette. It was a text parser game, and it was the same genre as a mystery. And I loved that game, and I really wanted to revisit that style because I really felt like there wasn't a lot of mystery games from that time, especially Sierra. They only did really those two, like The Colonel's Bequest and the sequel to Dagger of Amon-Ra. And then I didn't see that so much anymore, and I really loved that idea, and I wanted to kind of revisit that when I started to make my own project.
Yeah, and again, I loved the mystery in it, and I loved the characters, and again, you do feel, well, she's not a detective, but you do feel that you are investigating, and we can talk about that as well with some of the gameplay that you're collecting the samples, because you play as a geologist as well, I believe, isn't it, that you're and footprints and everything, and and I don't play many text parser games. I did play The Colonel's Bequest a few years ago for the first time, but I kind of got into it very quickly. It was it was like, I'm an expert at this now. After a few minutes, I know what I'm doing.
It's an interesting game design, actually, because Roberta Williams was talking about moving away from so many puzzles, and she wanted to have people get to experience the story. And I remember seeing some of the earliest in the computer gaming world review of The Colonel's Bequest. One of the criticisms was that it wasn't super puzzle heavy and it was more story based. And I feel like nowadays we're starting to get into more story based and less puzzly adventure games to kind of appeal more broadly. And that's kind of where I came with it as well. Like, I love the idea of you could get to the ending of The Colonel's Bequest and you wouldn't get soft locked necessarily, and you can't get stuck horribly in that game, and you get to experience that story, and that's what I wanted to focus on as well.
Yeah, well, and again, we'll talk about was over, and it looks fantastic as well.
Thank you.
Certainly, you can see the inspirations, but I think just on its own as well, it just looks absolutely fantastic. Not just from a nostalgic point of view, but just from an art point of view as well. It just really, really looks, it captures the imagination. That it was just gorgeous background. So. Congratulations on that. And then, Yann, you mentioned your game Inspector Waffles Early Days. What can you tell us about this game?
It's a detective game for, like I said, for PC and Game Boy. And it was not something that at this time detective game were known on the Game Boy. It doesn't exist. And so I wanted to do that. And it's divided in two parts. There is a top-down 2D game like I don't know, Pokemon or Zelda on Game Boy, which were kind of an inspiration also visually. And there is also a point-and-click part and a detective investigating part I was more inspired by a game like L.A. Noire and a game that maybe Eden heard about, Detective Grimoire, which
Never heard of
it. Which is one of my favorite detective games, I would say.
Oh,
Wow.
And so a game like that, and so it's Inspector Waffle Early Days. It's a mix of all of that: a point-and-click part, a detective part, and a exploration part.
Well, some nice modern references there, or some inspirations. Now, just for anybody who doesn't know, Detective Grimoire was made by Adam and your brother at SFB Games. So I'm sure you're chuffed to hear that from you. We did not say this in advance. But yeah, no, your game as well at Inspector Waffles, and it's not your first game. You had Inspector Waffles, which was first released a few years ago, and this is a prequel. And it looks different. It looks very different. And why Game Boy? What is it about the Game Boy that made you? Because a lot of people say they want to make like a Nintendo game or something. But why did you want to go for Game Boy and release it on Game Boy?
So for two reasons, mainly because I wanted to continue the story of the first Inspector Waffles. It wasn't a huge hit, but it motivated me to continue because I really wanted to tell more of this story. And I was hesitating between doing a prequel and a sequel. And at the same time, I'm also a retro gamer and I really like playing on all console. And I took the opportunity to do the same at the same time to make a retro game on a retro console and continue the story of Inspector Waffles. And so I had decided to do a prequel on old console, so the story in the past on a console from the past. And say, okay, let's do that. So I study a bit how to make game on the retro console, and I went with the Game Boy because it was one of my favorite consoles when I was younger, and I thought it was the best way to make one. Of course, it's always the same. It's like making a point and click is easy, but yeah, it takes years. And so I went that way. And I really wanted to do something for me, like the young Yann from decades ago would be happy to play on his old Game Boy. And that's how it started. It was really a game for myself, to be honest. I wanted to do that, to be proud of making a game for an old console, and I'm glad that it went well, and it seemed that people enjoy it. So,
Well, definitely, I think. When we spoke about it, we loved it as well, and and I think it fits very well with your previous game, Inspector Waffles, which we loved as well. So congratulations on that.
Thank you.
So I will open it up to all of you. Yann, you kind of started to answer at least, because the three of you, we mentioned one of the things your games have in common is that they're all old school, but different old school. Why did you decide to make an old school? I mean, again, I know you're probably inspired by those games, but why did you guys want to dedicate your time and resources and money to making an old school game? So I suppose Julia. And is there anything that you learned maybe? But so why first of all?
I'm very much like Yann in that I wanted to make a game that the younger version of me would enjoy playing. And I liked the Colonel's Bequest at the time. I was kind of scared of it though, because you can die really easily in that game. And when I was
chandelier.
The chandelier, the crocodiles, and when I looked back, I thought, well, I would love to make something for that younger version of me, but make one that I actually would not be as scared about. So make something where it's harder to die, and it's a little bit, it feels a little bit safer, and that's what I was thinking about when I was making my game initially. But another reason is because I really love the text parser, and we haven't seen that too much nowadays. And that's another reason why I really wanted to create a new game that used a text parser and kind of introduce that to people, and also to really make people excited about it if they've said, just like me, well, I haven't seen a text parser game in a long time, and I wanted to make that experience really positive. And those are the two main reasons why I wanted to go. Oh, by the way, also the color palette too. I'm in love with the EGA color palette. I know people think it's ugly, and I get it, but there's something about that combination of colors that I find incredibly appealing. And again, you don't see a lot of that either nowadays. And my just desire to make a text parser game with that palette automatically makes it look super retro, which I'm totally fine with. I love that very, very specific era of adventure game, and I really wanted to recreate it.
Yeah, upon your point, there aren't many text parser games around now, so that alone would differentiate your game from almost any other game out there. And it's interesting because watching and reading interviews with mainly Sierra developers, Jane Jensen, Roberta Williams, when they moved from a text parser to point and click, they had a lot of complaints that people were saying, "Oh, now games were just too easy," which is a common, I think, criticism, certainly with adventure games nowadays. But it's been around for 30 years, this criticism. But I always wanted to play your game, but I suppose, how confident were you, or were you confident that that a lot of people would be interested, or we know now the answer is yes. But when you were making it and when you were spending the time making it, how confident were you that other people and modern audience would be interested in text parser again?
Not at all confident. Not at all confident. Like Yann, I started making something that I would want to play most of all. That was the starting point, and that was how I worked on it for years and years. And then I got to a point where I got the opportunity to show it publicly. I showed the demo of the Crimson Diamond in 2018 at a local games event here in Toronto. And that was the first time I actually put it in front of other people, and I could see them get excited about it. I could see people walk up. I had a stand-up banner, and I saw people's their faces light up in recognition of this particular color palette, and seeing people sit and play it. That was really exciting. And then another part of that was they would tell their kids, "This is the kind of game I used to play when I was your age." And then the kids would sit down. Not all the kids. There's only some special kids from maybe about age of 9 to about 13 or 14. And they've never played anything like this before, and they sit, and some of them get super locked in, they really want to figure this out. And when they figure out about the typing, some of them got completely entranced by it, and that got me excited too, because I thought there's more to this than just nostalgia. For me, it's just started as nostalgia, but when I was a kid, I wasn't nostalgic for this, and I fell in love with it just the same. And that made me feel like it could be possible that there's a bit of a bigger audience for this beyond just people like me. Maybe there are people who would be interested in playing with a game this way, a way they'd never had done before.
Yeah. Well, and again, so that was probably the first time that you thought, "Oh, this could work. This could have a market. There could be a market for it." Well, you mentioned nostalgia. We will talk about that very shortly. But Adam, following up to you as well. Again, I'm guessing you mentioned Silent Hill and Resident Evil. But what was it about those games that appealed to you the most, that made you want to make a game that was similar to those games? Why did you want to make Crow Country? Survival horror, the way it looked, the way it felt, like those games in particular.
I mean, I'm a big PlayStation 1 guy, a big collector. As an adult, I played them as a kid. Obviously, that's why I like them, because everything you do when you're 12 is the best thing ever, right? But I have a big PS1 collection, and I play all kinds of stuff, survival horror, but lots of other genres, and I like to buy obscure games that are bad or disliked or forgotten as well. So I play everything, and I like sort of exploring hidden gems and all these kind of forgotten treasures. And yeah, I just gravitated towards survival horror over and over again. And I've played a lot of obscure ones, but yeah, let's be honest, Resident Evil 2, let's say, there's just some magic about it. It was to this day, it's the most satisfying game to just sit and play through. There's some perfect magic to that formula. And to contrast it with what was going on in the AAA modern space, or even in the modern indie space, like something had been lost in the alchemy of what horror was doing. And I wasn't the first person to do a like retro horror, survival horror, obviously, like Casper Crows and the guy that did back in 1995. Anyway, I was like, I think there's so much untapped magic in this old formula. I just want to go back to it and make my own. Like, purely, as the others have said, because I wanted to make something that I myself would want to play. I'm thinking about it now. I think that's every game I've ever made. It's just making it for myself. I think that's what I do automatically. I don't even think about it. Why would I make a game for anyone other than me and Tim Schafer? Like, that's the two people in my brain, thought bubble. So yeah, that was really it. And the other reason I wanted to make classic, old school game is because I couldn't have made anything else. So I haven't made a 3D action game ever. I haven't even made really a 3D game before, except Crow Country. We've done a lot of 2D stuff, puzzle, narrative, animation, platform, or whatever. But I've never done 3D, and I've never done a game where you shoot things with a boss or whatever. So all of this was quite scary, and I didn't have the skill set when I started. So basically, I couldn't have made a modern game if I'd wanted to. I don't have the skills to make something that's up to modern standards. So, the low poly modeling and the comparatively simple controls of an old school survival horror, that was really all I could have done anyway. So it was a very good marriage. Like, okay, this is what I could make, and it's what I want to make. So that's what I made. So there you go.
Yeah, well, I think for all three of you, you've probably, I think it's safe to say, succeeded in making, at least these games that you're proud of, and I think every 30 other games that I've played, and that you want to play with. I think that's kind of a common theme that I'm seeing, that start off with, make a game that I want to play, that I'd be proud to play, and then, there's a market for it. But regarding a survival horror, yeah, I remember playing the demo of Silent Hill 1. I think, did that come with Metal Gear Solid, I think? And I played it with a friend of mine. I was like 12 or 13, and we were absolutely terrified.
Yeah.
and I read afterwards, I think, with the fog in the game, that was because they didn't have, I think, many resources. So you couldn't see far ahead.
To cover up the pop in from the the draw distance on PS1. If you want any graphics at all, it has to be very, very bad. So Silent Hill was like, well, let's just put fog everywhere. And that Silent Hill had 3D backgrounds. Resident Evil didn't even have 3D backgrounds. It was just painted backgrounds. And that's another piece of magic that you don't see that often anymore, although it's starting to come back.
Yeah, it just shows how creative, well, people still are creative, but back then, how creative they were. And Julia, you mentioned the nostalgia as well, which is a big, certainly for adventure games, it is it's a huge thing. It's still one of the kind of defining factors, and a lot of people, when you mention adventure games, they would probably say, "Oh yeah, I played some of those games as a child, or I played them growing up." And what I want to get your general thoughts to the three of you about nostalgia as developers of old school games, adventure and survival horror. What are your general thoughts on nostalgia, and I suppose how can we use it for good, like the three of you have done? So, Yann, I'll go back to you.
Wow.
What are your thoughts on just nostalgia in general and with video games, and how do you the way it is now, and how can we just use it for good? So use the force for good, shall I say? If that makes sense.
Yeah, have to say, for me. For example, if you take all the old Game Boy games, they are, like Adam was saying, they are hidden gems, they are amazing games, and there are also obscure games that sometimes are good, sometimes are very bad, because Game Boy was worse than PlayStation for the possibilities of what you can do, and some games you can see that they took maybe 1 month to make a game, and it's terrible, and I'm sorry for the people who did it, but yes, the nostalgia of the Game Boy, for example, we all remember Zelda, Pokemon, Mario Land, Wario Land. There's so many good games, but we forget about all the bad games that that happens when you went to the supermarket and ask your mom, I want this game because the key art was beautiful, and when you played it was not what you expected. And we have the feeling that all these old games were really cool, and we forget that a lot of modern games are using how to say, they are making you believe that the game looks like that. Like, for example, the Crimson Diamond is way more beautiful than the AGA game from that time. And you use the same palette, Julia, but it is, you have way more power in terms of computers to make something better. And also, for me, about that, the nostalgia, it's we have to make a game that looks like what we think that looks like before. I don't know if I'm clear, but
I think I get you. Yes.
Yeah.
and about that, I don't know if it's about the same question, but also we can talk about point and clicks. Point and clicks where everyone is talking about Broken Sword, Key Island, and that very good game. I will not say publicly anything bad about them. They're a perfect game, the perfect point and click. I don't want any war between point and click fans. But the difficulty of point and click nowadays is not the same as before, and for a lot of reasons, mostly because we are not stuck with the same point and click game for 2-3 months. If we don't like it, we go to another one. It was very difficult before. The difficulty before 20 years ago was well accepted because we don't have the choice, because there were not so many point and click, and if you want to play one, and if you're looking for the solution or the walkthrough, you have to ask for your friend that during the pause during high school. So yeah, anyway, what I wanted to say, it's modern. The nostalgia is good if you use what's the best in modern game mechanics to adapt to your situation, but you still have this. If you want to do something that have nostalgia, it's not good to make nowadays a copy from what was done before, and you have to adapt it graphically and game design too.
Yeah, no, some excellent points there. I don't know if either of you guys would like to jump in, Adam, Julia, for your games and your thoughts on nostalgia and what Yann said.
Yeah, I mean, just nostalgia in general. I think it's quite an attractive direction for an indie developer in his 30s to be doing. But on one hand, you could see it as kind of like a self-indulgent dead-end trap where it's like, oh, I just want to make stuff I already like. I just want to relive my childhood. And those things are true to an extent, and there's nothing really wrong with that. But I do think that it can be a good thing to go back and look at games that were simpler and more meaningful because of what we're looking at with the worst of the AAA modern space, where things are getting bloated and overly complex and overly long and meaningless. And so it does feel like there is some kind of like justification for going back to, in my case, like a PlayStation 1 era and going, okay, this model, these shapes, this scope is better, I think, and I'm going to focus on that. But yeah, like I also feel bad that I made Crow Country, because it's not, when I tell myself it's not actually what I want to be making. When we made Snipper Clips a few years ago, I felt really, really good about making that because it was a brand new idea, like just a gameplay idea, and it was colourful and silly and strange. And my whole life I've been like, this is what I want to make. I want to make stuff that's completely unique and very strange. I want to make a game that's as weird now as Parappa the Rapper was when it came out. That's my mantra, right? I don't want to make Parappa the Rapper. I want to make something that's as weird as that was. And I haven't actually quite ever done that. And getting distracted by making PlayStation 1 style survival horror games is not going to bring that. So I do. For me personally, I'm just going to try and balance it. I'm going to do some indulgent nostalgic games, and I'm going to hopefully do some like let's keep thinking what hasn't been done at all type stuff. And I'm sure you could mix the two as well. But anyway, that's just my personal thoughts on it.
Yeah, no, again, some excellent points. Julia, do you have anything to add about this? As
Yeah.
you know, as you made a game, that text parser game, do you have anything to add about nostalgia and your general thoughts on it and what the two guys said?
Yeah, I have a lot of thoughts on nostalgia. I mean, thinking about what Adam was saying in terms of like what he made was what all he knew how to make, and that's definitely where I was coming from with my game. Sometimes people ask me, "Oh, are there any arcade sequences in the Crimson Diamond?" Because back in the day there were these old adventure games, and they were notorious for having these arcade sequences. And I said no because I have no idea how to do that, and that was a guiding design principle for a lot of my game, and that just so happened that what I wanted to make was also what I felt was within my capabilities to do as well. Where, okay, no arcade sequences, there's nothing, there's no other types of systems involved here. It's as simple as I could make it for it being a text parser adventure game. So that aspect of it I find very interesting because I did very much make that same call when I was making my game. And also, Adam, you also mentioned in terms of finding those hidden gems and being really interested, and also, in revisiting these older games that maybe weren't so good. I stream on Twitch as well, and part of my stream I do at the end of the night is I play like old adventure games from back in the day, and that's a great way to look at design and sort of analyze, well, what is something I'm not too pleased about playing on this one, and what's really good that they're doing here at a time when the genres weren't so well defined and people were still totally figuring stuff out, and a lot of the time it was based on these design considerations and not to do with like how am I going to sell 500 million copies of this. It was very much more, we want to make the best game possible. And I love how it seems like decades ago that was the main focus, even of these bigger games. We call them bigger, but they're not big compared to stuff now. But taking those design lessons from nostalgia and saying, well, yeah, I like this and this is what I think we can improve on has been super key. Nostalgia has really worked in my favor, of course, because it kind of sets up this expectation that the Crimson Diamond by design does meet, where they see this color palette and they remind them of those other games, and the text parser reminds of other games. And then I try to improve upon those things, taking into account the decades that have happened in between. And also, as Yann mentioned, we have better tools now, and our resources are much better. I think someone told me the Crimson Diamond, if it was put on floppy disks, it would be like more than 40 floppies. And and the kernel split quest is like 4 disks or something, right? So they had to make a lot of like design decisions based on the limitations of we need to fit this on these little disks. I don't have to worry about that, and I can put in more art and more animation. I can put more music in it because of the fact that we have these tools now and the capacity to kind of release games that can transcend what was happening before, and also taking into account all the modern design that has happened since then. So I've taken this idea of nostalgia, and I said, well, I'm going to take those lessons and I'm going to put out something that, as Yann said, plays how we remember them playing and not necessarily how they actually played back then. Yeah.
Oh yeah, no, some again excellent points, and just as a player, I totally agree. I think another thing that I think your 3 games have in common is that you seem to focus. Okay, nostalgia certainly plays a big part. But I think one of the reasons that the 3 of your games were, I could say, don't know if they're hits, but I think one reason people love your game so much is because you have to focus on quality and not just to say, oh, well, this is what they did back then. So, I mean, for example, there are some games, that have a manual nowadays. I'm like, yeah, I'm all for that. But then I think there's 1 or 2 games that has data protection that, when you have to answer the questions in the Sierra days, and then you can go in, but I hated that back then, and I hate it now. So I was like, okay, no, I prefer that. And I'm playing through an adventure game that was released in the mid-90s, and I think there's some good things about it. But as you're saying, Julia, design-wise, it's a mess. It's like there is no direction. Yeah. And it is no. I don't want to. Probably don't want to give. I don't want to get any developer list, but I don't want to get. It's known as one of the most difficult point-and-click adventure games ever made. I'm enjoying it. I think that some of the writing is good, But it design-wise, I was like, they just need to remake it. I think if they could remaster it and give more direction. And I think that's one of the things that your games all have, that I never felt like, totally confused. But was there any, kind of making these old school games and then for a modern audience? I think another thing is that for your games, you don't need to have played the games that you were inspired by. Like, you don't need to have played a Colonel's Bequest or Resident Evil to enjoy your games. But I suppose to put it back to you guys, were there any, with feedback, to get it to modern players, was there anything that did you make any improvements based on feedback to make it better for modern players at all that you got from people who tested the games? So I don't know, Adam, if you wanted to say with Crow Country, was there anything that you did design-wise in Crow Country to make it easier for
in terms
players?
of modern players asking for modern stuff,
I know it's a general term, sorry, but I know it's a very general term.
No, it's interesting because, like some people said, oh, why on earth do you raise the gun with R1 and shoot with X? That's completely insane. And then other people would say, no, that's standard Resident Evil. I don't know what you're talking about. It's totally normal. And it just depends on whether or not you've played those games. So we kind of grudgingly, I guess, added in modern aiming controls, which is just all on the shoulder buttons for whatever reason. People, I think around 2007, it became illegal to use the face buttons to shoot a gun in a video game. So you have to use all four shoulders instead. I don't know. So we added that in. But actually, most of the feedback that we got that ended up making changes to the game were from survival horror fans. So, like classic survival horror fans. Like the big one was the game was too easy. Because I wanted it to be not necessarily entry level, but approachable to people who weren't hardcore survival horror fans. But I think we oversteered, and the game was a little bit too easy on launch. So 2 weeks after launch, we added a hard mode, and a few weeks after that, I actually made normal mode harder as well because it was still too easy. So that's one thing that we did. But that's not really it's kind of the opposite of what you were saying, because it's actually the people that really want to play the game find it, and they happen to have kind of more hardcore tastes. And a lot of indie horror games are quite hard because older survival horror games and PS1 games and stuff tend quite often are quite unforgiving. And I think some other indie devs really like that about them, and they ramp that up and they let it be cruel and unfair, because those old games were... There's a wonderful PS1 style indie horror game called Elisa by Casper Crows, and it's a masterpiece. But unlike Crow Country, Elisa is as harsh as it would have been. And I'm playing the game, and I'll get killed by something, and I'll be like furious. I'll think, I'm so annoyed, that was so unfair, so cruel. But then I think, is it cruel and unfair exactly like a PS1 game would be? Yes, okay, you win, Casper Crows, that's fair. The other feedback we got was actually, this is just kind of like a game dev thing that I guess to take note of. It was not after the game came out, it was after the demo came out, and it was people not giving feedback, but basically people who liked the demo that would then say, oh, I hope this is in the game, I like this game, I hope this happens, and I hope this happens. And basically I would read those comments and I'd go, I better add that stuff, because now people are looking... Basically, like, the demo put a good face forward for the Crow Country, and then people expected a game of a certain quality, and the game actually wasn't that good. And I put it so, like, all the mini-boss set pieces where stuff bursts out of a wall, there was nothing. And someone said, I really hope this game has got set pieces where mini-bosses burst out of a wall. So I was like, okay, I'll put in 4 of them. Unlockable secret weapons, there was nothing. And then someone said, I really hope this game, I put that in. So it's kind of a weird thing where you accidentally set expectations, and then you've got to quickly go back and match them. So Crow Country became a better game after we released the demo that people liked. Anyway, but yeah, as far as modern audiences go, I sort of see modern audiences as the people that were glad that it was on the easier side. And we got nice feedback from people saying, oh, it's my first survival horror game, or, you know, I didn't usually play this genre, but I really liked it. Or, you know, I couldn't play horror games, so I played on exploration mode, and had a great time. So yeah, it was the other side of the equation that we had to worry about.
But there are two really interesting points. And I suppose when people think modern audiences, they probably think of players who want more hand-holding. But the point you made about people who wanted it to be more difficult, I find that fascinating.
Yeah.
And then I think it's probably great to hear as well that they love the demos so much, and then they're almost giving like suggestions without realizing it.
Yeah, basically.
No, but I didn't. I would never have thought of those things either, because I know Roberta Williams and Ken Williams, when they released Colossal Cave last year, and they made it almost exactly at first like the text adventure but with graphics, and they were both shocked when people found it too difficult or unfair. And they, Roberta said, I never heard of the term hand-holding. So that's something new. But do you guys, Julia or Yann, have anything to add about any feedback from players? I know Julia, for example, the text parser aspect of it, because I think that I was a little bit concerned going into the game myself because I'm not used to it. But after just a few minutes, I was like, yeah, no, I got this. I think I can, it'll be okay. I think I can get through it as well. But do you have anything to add to what Adam said?
Oh yeah, absolutely. Yeah, I'm so glad to hear that you got acquainted fairly easily with the text parser. And most of the design decisions I made revolved around trying to make the text parser as palatable as possible for people, knowing that, first of all, it's a difficult kind of user interface to deal with anyway, because you are requiring the player's input in a way that they might not have ever done before. And so everything else was kind of centered around that aspect of it. And I did get feedback about the text parser after I had the demo out, or someone mentioned, there's a lot of typing in this game, and some people have like dexterity issues or physical limitations that make it difficult for them to type. And they suggested maybe these keyboard shortcuts, which was completely ingenious because they actually already existed in a Sierra game. I think there's Police Quest 2 or 3 had these keyboard shortcuts where you could abbreviate open door to OD or O space D. And I implemented those, and I like to take suggestions to implement them, but again, I am limited by my programming abilities. But that was one where it was very easy to implement, and I found it very good because not only was it helping people with those limitations, but it was faster for me to test my own game. It was faster for speedrunners to speedrun through the game. It helped everybody in a way I hadn't anticipated. So it was a total win on that aspect. But yeah, going to most of the time I was kind of preemptively designing around the text parser and trying to say, okay, how can I make this easier for people? And going back to this idea of the environment we release games in is so different from back in the day when you got your game for Christmas and that was it until your birthday. That was your next game. That doesn't happen anymore. And when I released my game, I have this hyperlink in the main menu that goes to an online hint book. I wanted to make sure that people can get through this and have a positive experience and enjoy the story, even if they're getting stuck with the text parser or just getting stuck with the game in general. That was really important to me. And just having like a notebook, like with Thimbleweed Park had this objective tracking notebook that I found really helpful. I implemented that. Auto-saving, just having an auto-save in the game is helpful because sometimes people would try something and then they couldn't take it back. All those things were things I thought about ahead of time, but it was the text parser shortcuts that someone did suggest to me that I found to have really far-reaching benefits toward more people than I was really expecting.
Yeah, and it shows, again, the benefits of showing the game to people, because they might think of something that, you guys or we might not think of.
I never played a text parser before I played Crimson Diamond. And when I started playing it and realised it wasn't a traditional point and click, it was really exciting because I was like, oh, this game is going to ask me to be creative in a way I've never actually been before. And I'm going to solve puzzles in new ways and stuff. And I thought that was really exciting. Honestly,
thank you.
The fact that it wasn't, a Monkey Island style game was like really, to me, that's quite weird. So I was like, kind of, engaged by that rather than worried about it. It's great.
Thank you.
Pre-point and click.
Sure.
Well, no, thank you. And Yann, do you have anything? The question again about feedback from players, from modern players.
Yes, I did like Julia. I showcased the game for small events, And like Julia, I was amazed by the young guys and girls from 8 to 12 that really enjoy point and click. So it was before. But about feedback, the first demo, I did a puzzle that it's not easy to see, to not spoil anything, and a lot of people had problem to find it because the screen on the Game Boy is very small, and if you play on a Game Boy Color or a Game Boy Standard, there is no light, so it's very difficult to see it. And I didn't think of that because I mostly debug my game on the emulators, and the colors are perfect and you can see it without any problem. And if you play on the Steam Deck, it's not a problem at all either. And so that was the feedback I didn't expect, and it was way complicated to change that. So I edit the color to make it more visible. I made it larger, but it was not enough. So for the next cases, I didn't do any visual puzzle. The sense of it's in the point and click part, so it has to be an object you can click on it, you see it, and if you read the text or if you understand what you have to take, you can understand the game, the case and the investigation, and not focusing on something that pixelant, actually. Pixelanting on Game Boy, it was not a bad idea, but because you can play the game on so many different peripheral, and it's something I didn't think first. So many different resolutions to play the game, and that was the most important feedback I got from during this small event. And I don't know if it's experience, but when I first did a showcase, the first Inspector Waffle, I got so many feedback. You shouldn't do that. You shouldn't. And I fixed all of it after. But for this one, I had the feeling that I was doing something the right way because I have way less feedback in that sense. I don't like this puzzle. I would have do differently. So maybe people are nicer that years ago, or maybe I understood a little better how to make a better key game.
Yeah, well, you mentioned experience there as well, that you kind of begin to learn, okay, no, I think this is working, maybe this is not working as much, and that kind of helps as well. So thank you for that. Some excellent points there as well. Now, I believe time is almost up. That we could talk. I could talk a lot more certainly about this. What I would say to people watching is I have played all three games, and the reason I invited you guys is because you're very nice people, but also your games are very good. So I would really encourage people to play your games. Very quickly, where can people find you? Well, I am Saoirse Dunbar at Adventure Games Podcast. If you like these interviews, I do a lot of them. We've been doing it for 6 years. We review games and that. So anywhere you listen to podcasts, and adventuregamespodcast.com. Now you guys, who would like to... Again, we'll go Adam. Where can people find you if they want to know more?
So you can go to sfbgames.com and you see all of our games there. I'm on Twitter and Blue Sky at sfbdim, D-I-M. I use those two both equally a lot. So yeah, that's it.
Yeah, and you're also working on a new game as well.
We're working on the follow-up to Tangle Tower called The Mermaid Mask, yes.
Well, looking forward to playing that. Thank you. And Julia, where can people find you if they want to know more about you and the game and games you're probably working on?
Yeah, sure. My main website is juliaminamata.com. That's where you'll find all the links to everything. There's also the crimsondiamond.com. I am Julia Minamata, all one word, on Blue Sky and on Mastodon. And I also stream on Twitch on Tuesdays at 8 p.m. Eastern. I am A_Maple Mystery.
Thank you. And Yann, where can people find more about you?
You can find me with Goloso Game, Goloso Games, on Twitter, Blue Sky, Instagram, maybe Twitch if I'm doing if I'm streaming again. And yes, I'm working on new games. That's all.
Fantastic.
Yeah, it's just prototyping, so I can't.
I look forward to hearing more. And Julia, I presume you can't say anything specifically, but...
yeah, I'm working on things. I'm actually currently working on just an update for the Crimson Diamond, some bug fixes and things. But yeah, I would like to make another small game this year, and then I want to get into my sequel sometime down the road.
And
yeah.
Also, check out Julia's art. It's fantastic as well. So, well, look, thank you to the three of you for agreeing to join me. It's been absolutely fantastic talking to you. Thank you to the organisers of LudoNarraCon. I just wanted to give them a shout out again, and Fellow Traveller for organising this. And again, Fellow Traveller Games, I think any time that they publish or develop a game, you know it's going to be very different and unique. And I'm always excited. I just finished playing Citizen Sleeper 2. I absolutely loved it. So thank you to everyone there for inviting us. And yeah, thank you to everyone watching. Hope you enjoyed it. And yeah, hopefully we'll be back. But hopefully everyone enjoys the rest of LudoNarraCon. So hope everyone is well. So take care.
Bye.
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 Bye.